going to give you some pointers to help you study for the financial accounting portion of the CBCE exam. So there's really about 8 areas that you need to focus on, and just go back and make sure you remember things about that. If you don't, maybe look up and refresh yourself. So the first one that we cover is just your basic accounting equation. And remember, that is your balance sheet equation as well. So it's just assets equal liabilities plus stockholders' equity. You might want to dig around into those elements of the financial statement that I just listed there, as well as the elements on your income statement, your revenues and expenses. I'm going to go ahead and list that here because that's another area that you will need to cover. Elements of the financial statements. And just remember which one you'll find on each statement and kind of which one out of the 10 elements, make sure you remember what they do, what statement they show up on, and what they mean. The third one is going to be cash flows. Give yourself a review of cash flows because remember, in accounting, when you're dealing with accrual accounting, cash flows does not always equal and rarely equals your actual revenues earned or your expenses incurred. So go back over and review that. The fourth thing you need to review is going to be depreciation. There are several types of depreciation you should remember, as well as just what it is. It's a cost allocation of those long-term assets. The fifth thing that you need to go over is the sale of assets. And so make sure you remember how to figure out a gain or a loss on the sale of those assets. Related to that, you need to remember how to calculate book value. So that's just your original cost minus any accumulated depreciation taken. And then once you know that book value, that is going to help you figure out your gain or loss on the sale of those assets. The next thing that you need to review is inventory valuation. So there are several ways that accounting allows us to value inventory. You should have learned about LIFO, FIFO, and the weighted average cost method. So you might want to go back and even work some problems in that and make sure you can remember how to do that. The next thing is going to be gross profit and net income. Make sure you remember how to calculate both of those. And gross profits, remember, is just your revenues minus your cost of goods sold, and that gets you to that first break in profit level on an income statement. And the net income's all the way down at the bottom. After you've taken out all the other expenses, you finally get down to net income. So be familiar with how to calculate those, as well as your profit margins. Make sure you can calculate your gross profit percentage as well as your net income. And then the final one we want to cover is the closing of temporary accounts. So remember, we have permanent accounts and temporary accounts in accounting. Your permanent accounts are the ones you don't close out. They're your balance sheet accounts that stay there all the time. But you've got those 3 temporary accounts that you do need to close out every single year. Your revenues, your expenses, and your dividends. And those get closed out to the retained earnings account so that you can start back over on January 1st or whatever the first day of your fiscal year is for the company with a fresh new income statement and new revenues, expenses, and dividend accounts. So out of all of these that I've listed, the last 4 here typically are the ones that students need to brush up on the most. Generally, students do really well in the financial accounting portion of this CBCE exam. But again, these are the 8 areas you need to cover. These last 4 areas are the areas that students usually need a little more of a refresher in.